questioning the source from which your moral code derives. You think that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised. I wonder, what will it take for you to start opening your eyes? I wonder.
Oh, that ended abruptly.
Yes, it did.
Hey, welcome to the show. This is the Atheist Experience. We are live from Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Jen Peeples. Yay!
Hey.
And there's people on the other side of the glass who are applauding like crazy, and
Yeah.
you can't hear them because we don't have a mic out there. But this is a live call-in show. If you go to atheist-experience.com, you'll find information about how to watch the show live, in case you're watching a recording of this, and also about how to call into the show. We have conversations with people, talk about what they believe and why. We tend to show a preference towards theist callers. We've got 6 phone lines. We try to keep at least 3 of them open for theists, or at least somebody who might potentially disagree in a discussion that we think would be good here, which is entirely our decision.
Yes.
Don't like it? Get your own show.
Yeah.
That's going to be a theme for today, because
Yeah.
there's a couple things to talk about. One of which, by the way, when the show's over, we get together for dinner at Star of India, and they will put the address right up at the bottom underneath there, along with all the information. The show runs from now until 6 p.m. Central. If you're an atheist or atheist-friendly person and want to come out, you're welcome to join us there. You're also welcome to come watch in the theater, in the studio, in the room on the other side of the glass.
That's right. We have a live studio audience every Sunday.
They're not looking as lively at the moment, but that's because I'm boring. So I thought we'd do something fun. Last night was our Christmas party, so Mele Kalikimaka, which as a kid, the line goes, Mele Kalikimaka is Hawaii's way of saying Merry Christmas. But I didn't understand that as a kid. So I thought it said Mele Kalikimaka is a wise way.
Ah.
So it sounded much nicer than Merry Christmas to me for a while, because it's wise.
Yeah.
So there's the Atheist Experience official Facebook fan page thing.
That's right. Yep.
And I, for the record, don't tend to participate on there. I have too much stuff going on. I don't go over and read stuff. I don't get involved. But we get occasionally emails from people who are new or people who've been there for a while saying, oh noes, I got banned, or something bad happened, or something, I don't think this reflects, properly on you or the show or whatever else. And that, by the way, also happens in whatever chat is associated with the show,
Yeah.
which is generally a cesspool that I've been saying for years that
Yes.
I just don't pay any attention to. But when I say that, I also say the same thing about YouTube comments that I don't read. And it's because the signal to noise ratio is not particularly good, although there are some great people in all of these places
Yes.
doing the work that I don't want to do, which is explaining myself over and over and over again. I'll do that here.
Okay.
So one of the things that happened is somebody posted on the Facebook group page, basically not happy with. Do you have the post or the gist of the
I don't have the post, but basically he was saying that he's a conservative and he's an atheist, and he doesn't like that we are promoting our liberal opinions, and that he would like to call and debate us, and if we won't debate him, we should stop talking about these things.
Yeah, if we don't give him airtime to present
Yeah.
his issues, that we should just shut up about it. And the answer is no, go get your own show. And one of the reasons for this is that the ACA has a list of position statements. If you go to atheist-community.org, and then in the About ACA and scroll down, there's a list of position statements.
Yep.
You are lucky today because there are 2 former presidents of the atheist community of Austin who are now not involved with the board. We're not
nothing,
presidents.
yeah.
We don't make any
Yeah.
decisions. And the thing to remember about all of this with regard to the show and everything else is there's a bunch of different people involved.
Right.
We don't always agree. Don't come crying to me if you got banned somewhere. Don't go crying to Jen if I missed your,
Yeah. We're not each other's keeper.
We'll take email criticism and the board will review things and we'll consider, hey, what's in the best interest. But just because you personally find us not to your liking, well, don't tune in. I mean, that's always the option. The ACA position statements are pretty straightforward, and they're based on our Constitution, and they were mulled over and debated and hashed out and rewritten, and sometimes very properly objected to, as I nod to my friend who did some objecting. Yeah. And we have what, at the time, and I think it's probably still now, the positions that the atheist community of Austin supports.
Right.
One of this guy's objections was, they think they're on there speaking on behalf of all atheists. No, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
I can't count the number of times we've not only explicitly said, we're not speaking on behalf of all atheists, we're not even speaking on behalf of each other necessarily.
Right.
And if I'm on the show, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily speaking on behalf of the ACA. And certainly not when I'm out giving a talk somewhere. I have to make this correction over and over. It's not my show. I'm not...
Right. And in general, when we talk about certain issues, we are talking about things that the ACA has very often taken a position on. Mm-hmm. And what we promote here on the show is almost always directly something that corresponds to one of the position papers.
And if it's not, by the way, no member of the ACA is required to agree with all these or sign. This is just what the group's going to do. Any individual member can do. And anybody who's part of the show could come on here and disagree as well and say, hey, I have this, that's what's fine. But we're not going to turn the show into a call-in show where you get to call in and start debating what the ACA's positions are. Instead, you can either create your own show and do that, or you could actually get involved with the ACA, bring up your concerns about any position statements, and lobby to make changes that are hopefully reasonable. Mm-hmm. I mean, the positions are really simple. The first one is church-state separation. Yeah. By the way, as I've acknowledged many times before, being an atheist doesn't tell you much at all about anything else somebody does believe. It doesn't tell you what political party they're with. We have Greens, Libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, Socialists, no affiliation, whatever. Are we largely liberal, progressive, Democrat types? Yeah, probably. Yep.
And we've made no secret of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's...
But that's an individual position. That's not a group position. The group is apolitical, and that's why earlier on during the campaign season I said, don't contact us asking us for an endorsement. I don't care if your candidate's an atheist. I don't care what we're not going to endorse. We don't endorse candidates or political parties or anything like that. We can't because we're a 501c3 organization.
But we can talk about issues.
But we can talk about issues, and especially issues where somebody's religious beliefs are driving public policy. And we do talk about those things.
So before we get to callers today, I figured we'd just run through the position statements that the ACA has, just so people are aware. Because one of the things is the ACA and the show isn't just about, I'm an atheist and now I'm just going to, constantly trash talk religion. I mean... hey, let's congratulate. You don't believe in God? I don't believe in God. Yes. We got it all solved. Yeah. We're awesome. Done. Goodbye. End the show. Yeah. The thing is, living in a world as a secular individual, and in particular as a humanist, which I would say most of us qualify as or identify as, that means that there are some things that decisions you have to make where you don't get to appeal to religion, and you don't live in a vacuum. It's like, you may not have a position on a particular issue, like, death penalty or whatever. Mm-hmm. You may be undecided. You may not have enough information, or you might have a position. So we created these position statements years ago. The first one's church-state separation. And it says, the ACA understands Article 6 of the United States Constitution prohibits any religious test for public office. The First Amendment necessarily requires that our government remain neutral with regard to religion. The 14th Amendment extends amendments of the U.S. Constitution to the state governments. And we believe this neutral position ensures that no religion receives preferential treatment over another religion or lack of religion. We support the right of each individual to believe or disbelieve as they choose. We support the right of individuals to practice their religious beliefs to the extent that such practice does not inhibit or infringe upon the rights and freedoms of others. Bam. Yeah. Here's the thing. You can be an atheist and not support church-state separation. You can not think this is a particularly good idea. I could point you to some who seem to have that position, like S.E. Cupp.
There are atheists out there who seem to think that some people need religion because they're just not ready to live in a world without it.
We don't agree with that. Yeah. And so that's where this position comes from. You want the next one?
Yeah, so the next one concerns human rights, and it says the ACA opposes legislation that seeks to discriminate against individuals on the basis of sex, race, religious belief, sexual orientation, or other status. We believe that laws and regulations which limit or deny freedoms and rights must have a valid secular foundation.
And I would actually think that that one needs to be amended or altered because the language is slightly more archaic. Yeah. When we say seeks to discriminate against individuals on the basis of sex, I would say that should probably be gender or also include gender, so that you're perhaps educating people on the difference between sex and gender.
Yeah.
But those are the two primary positions. There are several secondary positions that are derived from that, where we talk about what the ACA's position is on religious displays, the ACA's position on creationism and intelligent design, on public education, on the final ones on reproductive rights.
That's
and
right.
As we said, you can disagree with any of these and still be a member, but these are the goals, or the goals of the ACA are going to need to be consistent with these position statements, because this is what we've got. That said, if somebody wants to call in and say, hey, I disagree with you on thus and so, there's a chance that we may actually have the discussion if we think it's relevant. But at no point are we ever pretending that we represent all atheists. And when we get a complaint it was like the most bizarre thing to read, to have this person say, these guys think they speak on behalf of all atheists. You've never really paid attention to the show or bothered to investigate this at all.
He claims that he watches the show or listens to it every week, but I really don't think that could possibly be true, and for him to come away with the impression that we're claiming to speak for all atheists.
Yeah, I think it's probably more frustration that, hey, he doesn't believe in God and we don't believe in God, and yet we're saying things that he doesn't agree with, and how do I deal with that? Who knows?
Hey, we don't always agree on everything, but here we are.
I tried to make a rule that everybody involved with the show had to be bald and have a goatee, and I was shot down. I don't understand why, because this is fabulous look. It's perfect, and if you change the lighting, you can do like the evil, stereotypical horn thing, and Anyway, that's the thoughts that we had on that. So by all means, keep your feedback coming. Try to make sure that you're not marching in with your very first feedback with a whole bunch of things that are simply wrong, like, oh, you guys think you speak on behalf of everybody and blah, 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 and you just need to shut up if you don't, let me speak my piece. Well, this show used to be on public access television in Austin at the public access studio, and we'd get calls from religious people who wanted to do nothing but preach. Mm-hmm. And we shut those calls down because this show was about a conversation. If you want to preach, you can go do your own show. And there are plenty of religious shows. There's one of this show. And for better or for worse, whoever's sitting in these chairs on the day when the show is on, they're going to be the ones that decide the direction of the conversation, what conversations, who gets hung up on, who doesn't. And we're not always going to get it right. I've hung up on people way too early and let people go on way too long. Yeah.
I mean, it's a call that you make in the moment. So
it ties into what I do with debating as well, because if you're on live TV, if you're taking live questions, or if you're in a live debate, you have to make decisions in the moment, and you are not always going to get it right. But the key is, if you have good motivations, if your goal is to actually have a conversation, if your goal is to try to treat people fairly, make sure they get as good as they give, and actually do something to kind of foster communication, even when you get it wrong, you will probably be sufficiently self-critical to be aware that perhaps you got it wrong and make changes. And the other thing that happens is we do, in fact, listen to the feedback. You can email tv@atheist-community.org. We get more email than we can possibly answer, but I try to read as much of it as possible, and somebody will probably read almost everything that comes in. And if there's something where we're getting a trend of, concerns or a trend of, congratulations on something, that lets us know what people think of the show. But just the mere fact that we didn't happen to agree with your personal criticism doesn't mean that we have to give you a podium. Sorry.
Before we get to callers, several people have emailed us and made comments on the show's official Facebook page about a caller last week near the end of the show, Dana, who called in very distraught over a family situation. Mm-hmm. And I just want to give everybody an update on that. We have been in contact with Dana. In fact, prior to her calling the show, several of us had engaged with her in the ACA's Facebook group. And we were trying to point her to some resources to get her some help and everything. And so we're still in contact with her, and she is actively participating in that group and also now on the show's Facebook discussion group. So just to let you know, she's not out there all alone, even though she doesn't feel like she has any atheists in her immediate area. We're still doing what we can to provide a community for her, at least online.
And that actually brings up two more bits of house cleaning. One is about the lack of comments on YouTube videos. If you look in the description, there's a complete explanation of it there, pointing to the blog where you can comment. But the more important thing is, quite often we'll get calls from people, and somebody out there who either has been through a similar experience or lives near them or whatever, and is touched by their story or wants to help or do whatever they can, they will email and say, "Oh, can you get me the contact information for so and so?" The answer is no. Even if we had it, there's no way we're going to give somebody who emails somebody else's contact information.
Yeah.
I'm highly confident that the overwhelming majority of people are just doing this out of the kindness of their heart and really want to help.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if it was your information, I don't think you'd want us giving it out to just anybody who happened to email. And when we're dealing with people who are, in many cases, not out, and not out for good reasons, where they're at risk, giving out that information could be incredibly harmful. So while we appreciate your empathy and your support, we are not going to be giving out information for anybody who calls the show. Even if I have their I'm going to give you this guy's cell phone number right now, and you guys can all call. No, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
All right. We're in atypical fashion today. We're going to start off with an atheist caller, even though we have some theists on the line, because Eric helped us out with the pre-show phone test to make sure that we could hear each other. So, Eric, you there?
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
We can. Can you hear me now?
Excellent. Yes, I can hear you guys. Hey, Jen and Matt, I'm an agnostic atheist. I have theistic challenge questions. I have a million, so cut me off whenever, and I'll call back another week.
Okay,
the first
goodbye.
one on the call screener. Oh,
sorry.
Yep, classic. Okay, so Eric Hovind said that all branches of science were founded by religious people. So what do you guys have to say about that? And why does Hovind probably think that's compelling? Checkmate, atheist.
Yeah, so let's assume for a second that it's completely true, that all branches of science were founded by religious people. So what? You're talking about a world that was almost entirely full of religious people. Who else would have been doing it? But the question is was it their religious beliefs that directed them to begin these branches of science? In some cases, perhaps. In some cases, not. But science isn't tied to or contingent upon any religious belief or any religious person. It is a methodological system which, when it stopped being natural philosophy and began to be science, set aside any appeals to the supernatural, making all religious claims irrelevant to the proper workings of science. And it's not that these people's religions gave us truths and understandings about the world. The fact that religious people basically invented disciplines of science or began disciplines of science that were then reformed, it's the process that went through. You might as well be saying all hospitals were started by religious people. Well, that doesn't tell you anything at all about what religion has to say about medicine. All charities were started by religious people, which is a lie, and we have more and more secular charities. But the fact that somebody is religious and doing something that is true and good doesn't tell you anything at all about whether or not their religion is true and good.
Well, and I would add too, back when a lot of branches of science were first kind of coming into being, think about for a minute, who had access to books and reading, and how would you go about recording this stuff? And mostly it was, at the time, churches controlled a lot of the educational opportunities that people got. And so if you wanted to study something, Oftentimes you ended up, if not in a monastery as a monk, certainly you spent some time there. So it's not, an unusual thing that, that was sort of the repository of knowledge for a lot of communities.
Religious groups have created a lot of hospitals, a lot of universities, and back in darker times, that's where the literate people were. So okay. And by the way, I don't think that his claim is true. I'm pretty much convinced that we could fairly quickly come up with some scientific disciplines that were founded or fine-tuned in their starting states by people who weren't religious. And what we also might find is that some of these people who were religious, who started scientific disciplines, were doing so in opposition to the teachings of their religion. Yes, they were convinced that God had created the world and wouldn't lie to them, and that there should be some natural order in the world that they could then go and discover how God did it. You get back to mathematics as a language with which God has written the universe. But you might also just be talking about vague deistic and theistic notions and working in direct opposition to what the church had to say, which is how Galileo ends up in prison.
Yeah.
Good enough?
Pretty cool. Yeah, could it be like a cum hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy? Like with this, therefore, because of this.
Well,
they were religious.
It's not that fallacy, because simply saying all branches of science were founded by religious people isn't an argument, it's just a statement. I don't know what conclusion he reaches from that and how he reaches it. So there's not a fallacy to identify. It just is either true or it's not true.
Mm-hmm. Very cool, very cool. I apologize. May I ask a second theistic challenge question, or should I call back next week?
You can have one more theistic challenge question quickly.
All right, I'll ask the best one. You guys are pro-gay marriage, so aren't you guys the bullies and bigots shoving your values onto Christian cake makers and others, and your evolution values? And why are atheists and liberals trying to oppress Christians who just want to live by their values and make their businesses do the same? And also, white men are the most oppressed group in America.
Okay. So how would you respond to that parade of...
Yeah, so... the rules are, if you're open to the public, you have to serve the public. So if you don't want to make cakes for gay people, then what you do is, instead of having a business that's open to the public, you form a private club, and then people can join your private club, and you can only sell cakes to them. But,
The main answer, I think, to most of these is something that we actually read when we were going through the position statements, that the ACA opposes legislation to seek discrimination against individuals on the basis of these things. We believe that laws and regulations which limit or deny freedoms and rights must have a valid secular foundation. If your religion tells you that you need to be able to hit people over the head with a stick, and I take your stick away and prevent you from hurting people, I'm not imposing upon your religious freedoms, because your religious freedoms end where they begin to interfere with the rights and freedoms of others. So this is the sort of crybaby, I'm the majority who's being persecuted by the minority, when what's really happening is we are making sure that you don't get a privileged position where you are then allowed to legislate your personal religious convictions onto other people who don't share them. That's it.
Very cool, very cool. Thanks, guys. I'll call again some other time. The show is like a Rocky montage for your brain, so keep up the good work.
All right. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
All right. We've got Trey in Atlanta. Thanks for waiting.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good.
Good. Want to say first, I love the show. It's been really helpful to me, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I grew up a very conservative, somewhat fundamentalist Christian in the heart of the Bible Belt. And over the last few years, I'd like to think I've progressed far out of that mindset. And I do consider myself a theist. However, God is not this man in the sky to me that pops his head in when we do or say the right things. I don't know what he is, but to me, God is just the thing behind the thing behind the thing, however far you carry that back up.
Well, if you don't know what God is, and you have this really vague notion that it's a thing behind a thing behind a thing, why would you believe it? I mean, I don't know. How can you believe something that you don't even know what it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's the reason I was calling, because the thing that keeps me believing in a God of some sort are strange and meaningful coincidences, for lack of better words, that have happened in my life and other people's that keep me, I mean, I can't say any other way, but feeling like there's something out there that cares.
So what kind of strange, meaningful coincidences?
Well, I've got two. One's very personal and one's very hilarious. I'll start with the personal one. When I was in college, I became aware of a form of an anxiety disorder that I had, and started having panic attacks for the first time in my life, and saw some doctors and was told I should take medicine by some and not by others, and just not knowing what to do, I guess, gave me even more anxiety. And so because of the mindset that I had at the time, I thought the best thing I could do was to go lock myself in a little study room inside of my university library and pray. And when I was praying, I felt this urge to look at a specific passage in the Bible that I didn't know what it was, but I looked it up anyway, and it happened to be a verse about anxiety, which seemed extremely meaningful, obviously, at the time, because I wouldn't have been able to tell you at the time that's what the verse was. And so it had a major impact on me in that moment. And then later that day, a friend of mine from out of town called and told me that he had a family member pass in a nearby town and he'd love to see me. So I hopped in my car and I hopped on the highway. And as I was driving, I turned on a radio station and there was a preacher. Well, not immediately. I was listening to some music and then I got out of range. And so I started changing the channels, and a preacher was on the radio station preaching about that exact same verse about anxiety. And then through another weird, strange of events, I almost had a car accident on the way back from seeing my friend, and did a complete 360 off the interstate. Not interstate, it was a. I'll spare the details, but I almost went head on with a large truck, and never had panic attacks again. And I'm leaving out some really weird details that involve the band Pearl Jam as well. But I'm trying to keep it short because I get annoyed on your behalf when I hear people call in with too many details. And so that would be one of a bunch of experiences in my life.
Okay. So
that I realize can only really be evidence for me.
Yeah.
Just experiences.
Well,
I would never expect anyone to believe in God because of my experiences, I guess.
Yeah. So one of the things to keep in mind is that humans are pattern-seeking creatures. And so we try to find a pattern even when there's not one. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can't obviously offer an explanation for why this particular verse would pop into your head.
Right.
But, you said that you were raised in a very fundamentalist religion. And so is it possible that at some point in your life you heard that someone preaching about that verse or talking about it?
Yeah.
And in a moment of stress, when you were, sitting here, kind of deeply contemplating your situation, this popped into your head.
Yeah, I'm sure that I subconsciously could have been aware of that passage in a way that made me go to it.
There's several potential problems here, and one of them is that you're talking about Bible verses. Does that mean does that mean that you think the Christian God is the God that you believe in? Because I mean, you talked about it as the thing behind the thing behind the thing.
Yeah,
but
no,
there's no tie
to me.
Okay, so there's no tie between the thing behind the thing behind the thing and a passage like Philippians 4, 6, and 7, which is
Right.
potentially
That was the verse, by the way.
That was the verse. Yeah, sure. It's don't.
Yep.
I had to look it up. It's not like I have all of this memorized, but I knew roughly what you talked about.
Yeah.
But those two verses, by the way, Philippians 4, 6, and 7, it's not unlikely that this would be something that would pop into your head or something that a sermon would be about, because it says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition with thanksgiving present yourself with request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding with God, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. That's, I mean, that's like a go-to verse. But the thing to remember is the Bible talks about human experience, and it talks about spiritual experience, and it has a bunch of things that can easily be interpreted as good advice or sage advice or interesting advice. That's the reason why people go to it. So here's a test you can do. You can type random Bible verse into a Google search, and there's a website, sandersweb.net, that will, there's a PHP script that will just pop up a random verse, and see how many times you can find a way to interpret the verse that pops up in a way that is meaningful to you. For example, if I just go there and hit refresh, let's see what the first thing that pops up is. And it is God, this is 2 Corinthians 1, 21 and 22. And it is God who establishes us with you in Christ and has anointed us, and who has also put his seal on us and given us his Spirit in our hearts as a guarantee. Now, does that say anything specifically about anxiety? No, so it's not going to be used as much of a significant coincidence. But I'm pretty sure that I could devise a little interpretation and mini sermon about that does relate to anxiety.
Yeah, and it doesn't. This experience didn't, or at least now, doesn't affirm the authority of the Bible to me as much as it just causes me to wonder if that's what God used, because that was what I was raised with, and it's the tool that I had. It's the way that He met me in that moment.
So maybe what you're arguing for, maybe you should pull up other holy texts, and if you find coincidences there, what you would end up doing, I suspect, is saying, oh, there's a God that isn't a part of any of these individual religions, but he's directing me to these quotes in different religions because they're particularly meaningful to me at the moment.
I guess so.
What if that's not the case? What if you are reaching out to things that you either were familiar with, or upon reading it, given the predisposition to think that a God is trying to tell you something, you are going to do everything in your power to interpret it that way?
Yeah, I'm open to that. I guess it's just.
So at what point should you actually believe that a God is sending you messages?
I don't know. I mean,
then that seems to be the thing to find out.
Yeah.
It's. I get your concern and where you're at in this. Hey, I've seen too many coincidences, and there are things that were important to me, and it seems like that God is telling me something becomes a more reasonable answer. The problem is you have no way of demonstrating either that it is true, that it's possible, or that it's probable, and you have no way of evaluating the probability that God is sending you messages compared to the probability that you're sending yourself messages, or that you are interpreting things this way. So if you can't distinguish between the two, then there can't possibly be a justification for believing it. But it gets even worse. And it gets worse because while you can't compare the probabilities to reach the reasonable conclusion, and I lost my train of thought here for a second. The issue for this is I can't tell the difference between when I'm interpreting things meaningfully on my own or if a God's sending me messages. But let's assume for a second that a God is sending me messages. Let's assume that the conclusion that you're leaning towards is in fact the case. What the hell kind of God is it that sits back and maybe picks out a verse in some random holy text to direct you to, rather than actually communicating with you directly and offering you the help that you're trying to get? and leaves you in this position of doubt. What God would want you in this position of doubt to say, maybe God is sending me this message, or maybe I'm interpreting it this way on my own. Any God worthy of worship, any God who actually cares about you, should at least be encouraging you in a way that is clear that he's sending you the message. If I've got a message for you, I'm not going to hem and haw and vaguely suggest that you should go interpret what my message is, especially if I know that you can get it wrong.
It would have to be a God who just counted on me to assume and just kind of, without being able to demonstrate it, decide that's what's going on and keep moving in that direction, I get the fallacy in that way of thinking too. I mean, that's what I wrestle with, because I have a number of these stories in my life that feel meaningful, and not only meaningful, but like I would say helped me become happier or a better person in some way. And so, because they're so personal, it's hard to just completely let go as well. And I think that's what I'm exploring is, what kind of God is so cryptic?
Do you think that
deals with me? I mean, I've probably prayed for kids to not starve to death as well.
Yeah.
And
that hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Do you think that there are secular books that you could possibly read where you could also find things that make you happier and make you better? Okay.
100%. And to me, it's not the book; it's the fact that it happened at the right time, at the right place, in the right moment, and that's significant to me. And I hear a lot of other people with these kinds of stories, and it's I enjoy getting in debates, especially with people that are more religious, and I like to poke holes in their books and whatnot. But I never know how to approach someone who has a story that's just personal, where something that doesn't really, it's not like the laws of nature changed for God to speak to them. It's just they feel like he did. And I don't know how to, I was just curious how you would react to that, or like what you would say.
There's plenty of people who think there's plenty of people who think they've gotten messages from God, and yet these messages are conflicting.
Oh yeah.
So how do we possibly tell who's got it right, if anybody?
Yeah. That's a great question. Well, yeah, that's it. I mean, the other story is a hilarious one. I don't know if you know about the famous Tim Tebow John 3:16 game, where he decided randomly to write John 3:16 on his eye black, and then that game ended up breaking a bunch of records, and he threw for 316 yards, and he possessed the ball for an average of 31.6 seconds, and he also averaged 3.16 yards rushing, and I think there were two others. I mean, even the sportscasters were like freaked out, like what the heck is going on? Mm-hmm. And then John 3:16 was the most searched thing on Google that day, and I mean, you can imagine how Tim Tebow interpreted that.
Yeah, how many other games did Tim Tebow write a scripture on his eyes and absolutely suck?
Yeah.
There's a reason that he's currently doing.
That's the only one.
There's a reason that he's currently doing the baseball. Yeah, God really wanted Tim Tebow to win. Hey, by the way, look up that game and see what the odds makers were predicting on the score of that game, and that then maybe you can determine. Like if they were predicted to lose by 40 points.
I did fact check that one, and that's why it stuck with me, because all the stats that in that story were true, and they only existed because he actually broke records and performed in a very unusual way.
Yep.
And
so somebody has a good day.
Saying like, God,
what if Tim had a lucky rabbit's foot in his pocket?
He would have gotten a hat trick, or is that hockey?
That's hockey.
I think that's
good try.
Hockey or soccer.
But, all right, thanks, Trey. I appreciate the call.
I appreciate your time. Keep it up.
Thanks.
Right. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a coincidence. I get it. I mean, I understand. People look around and they see something, and it just seems so incredibly unlikely that these events would come. But they happen all the time, and you hear the stories about them all the time.
Yeah.
And what kind of God operates on, hey, let me conspire to make these things work together.
Yeah.
And by the way, what does that say about us? Are we just puppets where this God is moving us around?
Yeah, and it's like, it's almost like it's a game. It's like, I'll throw this out there and see if they pick up on the significance of this.
I've got the most important message that anybody could ever have about how to gain eternal life. And instead, I'm going to wait until you're suffering from anxiety.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to make you remember a verse that eases your mind a little bit, because that's the most effective way of...
Yeah. I could have eliminated the anxiety just up front, but no, I'll make you suffer for it.
I'm going to let Tim Tebow break some records while he's got John 3:16. Hey, have you ever watched a football game where somebody didn't have a John 3:16 poster? I mean, why don't we go back to every record that's ever been broken, look through the footage for that game, and see if we can find a John 3:16 there?
Yeah.
But I understand. People get this feeling, oh, it just couldn't possibly be coincidence.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go next?
Well, we've got Josh on the line.
Sure, we can go to Josh.
Yeah.
In Dallas, Texas.
How's it going, guys?
Hey, Dallas. Hey, Josh.
Hey, man, I love y'all's show.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I am a theist, though. I just I'm very open-minded, so I like looking at both sides.
Okay.
Okay, and my question to y'all would be over the cosmological argument.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure y'all are very familiar with it as far as the premises go. I can restate them.
Well, it depends on which version.
Yeah, there's...
Okay.
Cosmological is a category of arguments, and then there are specific arguments that fit within that category. The most typical is the Kalam, which William Lane Craig uses. Sure.
Yeah, that's the one. I'm wanting to talk about is the Kalam cosmological argument.
Sure. First premise is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence.
Exactly. Everything that had a beginning had a cause.
Okay, it's slightly different wording, but everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. So, have you got it sitting in front of you?
I have the premises in front of me.
You don't have the conclusion?
Oh, yeah, I have 1, 2, and 3. Number 2 is that the universe had a beginning. And then the conclusion would be, therefore, the universe had a cause.
Cool. Therefore, the universe has a cause is the conclusion of the Kalam cosmological argument. From the Kalam cosmological argument, what do we know about the cause?
So I first want to start with premise 1. And then
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We can go right to the conclusion. The conclusion of the Kalam cosmological argument is, therefore, the universe had a cause for its existence. The argument is presented. It has premises. Everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause for its existence.
Yes,
that argument does not include the word God at all.
No, but...
So it's not an argument for the existence of God, then, is it?
No, it can be. It is.
No, it cannot be. It cannot be and isn't. You can't have an argument for something that does not contain the thing you're arguing in any premise or the conclusion.
Matt, with the science that we have today, either something created the universe or nothing created the universe.
Okay, but now you're not talking about the Kalam cosmological argument. You asked what I thought. You asked what I thought of the Kalam cosmological argument, and I'm telling you, it's not an argument for the existence of God. Its conclusion is that therefore the universe has a cause.
So premise 2 says that the universe had a beginning. Would you say that's correct?
So first of all, I reject premise 1 and possibly premise 2, and I'd highly recommend that you watch the debate between Sean Carroll and William Lane Craig, where Sean exposes the problems, or you can look at Theoretical Bullshit's YouTube video where he goes through this. But here's the thing. Most modern physicists are rejecting the premises of this argument. But it doesn't matter because I can concede all of it, and we get to the conclusion, therefore the universe had a cause for its existence. That argument tells us nothing about the nature of the cause, whether it's an agent, whether it's an entity, nothing at all. You have to add something to the Kalam to get to a God. So I've given you what?
That would be as far as later. So my argument is there's a possibility.
Josh.
Either way, either something created the universe or...
Are we going to talk about the Kalam cosmological argument, or are we going to talk about something else?
The Kalam cosmological argument.
Okay. The conclusion of the Kalam is what?
Therefore, the universe had a cause.
Okay. Does that tell us anything at all about God?
Yes, something.
No, it
No.
doesn't. How can it tell us anything about God when there's nothing in there, nothing in the argument about God? You are inferring something and adding something to the argument. If I say all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal, and you say that this is proof that pixies are what makes Socrates mortal, you are adding something to it. The Kalam cosmological argument is not an argument for the existence of God. It is an argument that the universe had a cause for its existence. It is potentially incorrect, and you can talk to physicists about this. It is also dishonest in the sense that the original version of the cosmological argument had as its first premise, everything has a cause, and then when they said, hey, what about God? Then they make this post hoc rationalization that God didn't have a beginning. But it may be the case that we're playing games with words here, that our local presentation of the universe, the local space-time, had a beginning that we identify with the Big Bang, which may not even be correct, but that is the current best scientific model, and that it may not make sense to talk about anything prior to the Big Bang if time came into being with the Big Bang. And so you have this situation where our local presentation of space-time had what appears to be a beginning, but that doesn't tell you anything at all about whether the cosmos in which the universe exists had a beginning. It may or may not be eternal. This is something you can't investigate. But while all of that is interesting in speculation, the Kalam cosmological argument is not and cannot be an argument for the existence of God until you add something else.
Right. So I'm saying that space, time, and matter had a beginning. Would you agree with that?
Local space, time, and matter apparently has a beginning, but we cannot confirm that because we cannot go back and investigate prior to the Planck time.
No, yes, that's true. But as far as the evidence that we do have today, Stephen Hawking, Einstein, everybody is saying that the universe had a beginning from nothing.
Actually, these things are changing, and when they say the universe had a beginning or the universe sprang from nothing, these are physics models that are talking about the local presentation of space-time in our universe. They are not a claim about the cosmos or whether there's a multiverse that is producing infinite universes or anything like that. So if all you can talk about is the universe that we inhabit, because that's what we can explore, and when we speculate on what happened outside of the universe, we don't have any grounds for that. But none of this has anything to do with whether or not the Kalam demonstrates that a God exists.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
If you want to actually call in with an argument for the existence of God, first thing you should understand is how to make an argument. And the Kalam cosmological argument is valid. I think it's unsound. You should know the difference between validity and soundness. It is valid in structure. But the problem is, if you have an argument that has major and minor premises, and at no point in that argument is God one of them, it's not an argument for the existence of God. It's not an argument that relates to God at all. If the conclusion is, therefore, the universe had a cause, the next question becomes, okay, what could be the cause for that universe? Those are the next questions, assuming we agreed with that, which we don't necessarily. And that's where you start having an argument for why you think there is a God, and then you can have an argument for why you think that God should be considered as the cause that the Kalam points to.
Right, and it's like, I guess somebody had asked at one point, do you think an argument can be used as evidence for a God? And I said, well, I can't think of a single argument I've heard that could be used as like evidence for a God. An argument is an argument.
This is the Kant's critique of pure reason and whether or not you could have an epistemologically sound. I think that you could construct an argument provided that the premise is tied to something empirical.
Yeah. But, like you said, assuming we accept the Kalam cosmological argument as valid and sound, which there's questions about that, you're right. We get to the point where we have to start talking about what is this cause. And if you're asserting that, okay, it's this thing you're calling a God, you still have to have evidence that says, first of all, that this cause that you're positing exists, in the form that you're describing. And if you want to say it's a God, okay, what are the characteristics of this God? The argument tells us nothing about that.
You could reformat the argument. You could change. Here's one way that you can try to assess an argument to see what it is or isn't telling you. Let's redo this with the Kalam. Premise 1. every existing human being had parents. Premise 2, Matt is an existing human being. Conclusion, Matt had parents.
Yes.
Now that's valid, and I would argue it's actually sound.
Yes.
If you present that as an argument for why Mark is my dad, you're wrong.
Exactly.
Mark's not included in that argument. You're actually factually wrong. So what you're saying the cause is, or who you're saying my parents are, is a completely separate issue. This is why the Kalam, this is the tap dance that William Lane Craig does, by the way, because he'll present the Kalam, and then he will say, let's talk about the kind of thing that could be the cause of the universe. Assuming you accept the Kalam, which seems reasonable to people who aren't, cosmologists and don't have objections to certain things. Let's talk about things. So he has additional arguments that he uses after the fact, basically saying, hey, the universe had a cause. What kind of cause could it be? Boom, 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 boom. This gets us to God. And then he has additional arguments that gets him to Jesus. Go back through some of Bill's debates and see how many times those extra arguments are actually presented rather than just, hey, we have extra arguments that get us to the God specifically, but this debate is just about whether or not there is a God, and so I'm just going to focus on this. You didn't even need the Kalam at all to do that. You could have walked in and said, hey, we need some explanation for why things are the way they are. Let's have that discussion and why I think it's God. He doesn't do that.
Yeah.
But, what do I know? I don't have a terminal degree in the relevant fields, which is why Bill Craig won't debate me, and I would recommend, as I did with Richard Dawkins when we were in Vancouver, that all of our friends who are godless heathens who have terminal degrees, PhDs or whatever, in relevant scientific fields, if Craig wants to debate you on something that's in your field, you should just decline using his own criteria, noting that he doesn't have a terminal degree in physics
or biology or anything.
What on earth makes him think that he should be on a playing field with one of the world's preeminent biologists to argue about biology when he won't debate people? It's pretentious silliness. But that's enough of the Craig rant.
By the way, I like your analogy with the parents.
It came to me as if it was a coincidental gift from a god.
There must be a God.
Must be a God, because I can't come up with this stuff without help from, a divine being. We've got Humberto in San Francisco. Thanks for waiting.
Of course. It's a pleasure. You guys can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Amazing. Thank you for having me. You have an amazing show. I've been learning so much with you guys the past 3-4 months. I've been researching the internet, watching all the videos, and I'm learning about criticism, about being skeptic. I've been learning a lot. Thank you so much for the show.
Thank you. How can we help? What question or comment did you have for us?
Okay, so since I started watching the show, I feel like I want to share my experience with you guys. So I'm a very skeptic person. I'm totally by science, and I'm being atheist all my life. All my family are atheists. My father, my mother. Mm-hmm. I'm from Brazil. In Brazil, we have a bunch of religions over there. A bunch. So it's supposed to be a Catholic country, but at the end of the day, nobody takes nothing serious in Brazil. So
wait, I didn't understand what you said. Nobody's
take nothing serious.
Oh, don't take anything. Just for fun, what I thought you said was nobody takes off their brassieres in Brazil, and I was like, okay, so nobody takes it too seriously. I'm not sure that that's true, because we get email from people in Brazil who are very concerned about religious theocratic ideas and religious encroachments, and so it may be hit or miss in different areas. I've been wanting to go to Brazil and interact with folks down there for quite some time, so maybe that'll happen. But go on with your story.
Yeah, I probably wish to go to Brazil to have something to do with my call, because like I said, I had a personal experience, a very strong personal experience, and my position is if you don't have the experience I had, you should remain atheist, okay? There's no doubt on that. Because my claim, what happened with me, I'm 47 years old right now. When I was 21, I lost my girlfriend, and we've been dating. I knew her since she was a kid, and we're very close. But like I said, I was atheist, and I thought someone died. That's it. That's how life it is. And it wasn't easy, okay? Even so, it wasn't easy for me.
Sure.
Someone approached me with a letter that was supposed to be psychographic. It makes sense, the word, I don't know. It's like a medium got a message from her spirit, and brought me a letter.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm understanding, you were 21, your girlfriend died, and a medium gave you a letter that was supposedly from her?
Yes, actually, a friend of mine got the letter from a medium and brought to me. Was the letter supposedly written before, or did the medium write the letter? The medium was talking to your deceased girlfriend and writing a letter on her behalf? Yeah. Okay. So I got the letter in my hands, and I don't even want to read it, because it's not only because I didn't believe in afterlife, but also there's all kinds of scams. Yeah. You're in a very exposed moment in your life. I have yet to meet a medium that has been able to prove that they're not scamming people. Yeah, no, of course, you're in a position that you're willing to believe in things that, because you're very exposed, you're very sad. You want to find a meaning of something, okay? I was looking for a meaning in all kinds of sorts. You can imagine the places I've been trying to find a meaning for that. But I'm, as a skeptic with critical thinking, I never bought nothing. And I didn't want to even read the letter, okay? Yeah. But how can I say, when you're 21, sometimes you're not, how can I say, especially in Brazil, you're not so much by the law system. And so me and her used to do things that we wasn't supposed to share with no one, okay? Mm-hmm. So, and what happened is, in the letter, those things came up. Nobody knew, just us. So that brought my attention. I said, at least I have to give some attention on that, because I'm deadly serious about that. There are things that no one knew was in the letter. That wasn't just impossible. Okay, but anyway, I want to check it. So what happened is, you go to a place, it's like a warehouse, 600 people. They're waiting to get message from spirits. Sure. Okay, so people that already die. So what happened is, this very old lady called Celia, she started calling from the deceased name. Okay, so my girlfriend was called Monica. So I don't know if we can spend that much time with my experience, but she called by Monica. I went there in front of the 600 people. Everybody was there waiting for it, just the same as I did. And she said, "Oh, so you are Humberto." She never saw me before. So it seems like a very, very, amazing thing that was happening. And so, Monica is here, but she's with someone else. There's someone right inside her, on her side, and her name is what's the name of it? Nilsy. And I was very, I had no idea who Nilsy was. And in front of everybody, you don't feel like you say, "No, you're wrong." I had to be find a good way to say, "I'm sorry, Celia, I have no idea what Nilsy is." Mm-hmm. And she came to me and said, "Nilsy is your grandmother's sister that died in 1953. She was murdered by her husband." And then I remember that, because, when we have some kind of experience in a family that someone get killed by her husband. And I remember that, because I didn't know her name, but I knew that happens. And then I remember her name. There's something was just impossible. I'm sorry. But you can, or she's have better information than FBI, or that would be true. So I start coming back. And I start coming back since then. So Humberto, yeah, of course. How many people knew this story about your grandmother's sister being murdered? My grandmother and her family, which that's all the ones that knew it. It wasn't reported in the newspaper. No newspaper. And there was no other family. So I talk about 1950. That happened in 1950. You
So
had no
somebody got
record.
murdered and there was no police report and no...
No, of course there was. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, so if there's a police report, then somebody other than your grandmother knows it.
No, of course, yeah. But if you try to find something in a police report today, when everything is on records, good luck. Imagine in 1950. You know.
Well, see, that's the thing is, you classified this as impossible, when in reality, it may have just been a little bit difficult. What a lot of mediums or psychics do is something called warm reading, where they actually go out and investigate the people to find out details in order to convince them that they're getting messages from the other side.
Totally agree. I totally agree with you. And that's my claim. She wasn't waiting for me. I just showed up, sir. She never saw me before.
Well, you went because you'd gotten a letter, right?
Yes, I got the letter.
So she doesn't need to I mean, all she needs... Go ahead.
Stop. No, I'm following you. I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you. What I'm saying is that happens like once in a week in these events. And I just show up. She didn't know I was there. But you're right. She could investigate that.
So the question
But
is...
there was no relation between my girlfriend and my grandmother's sister.
Yes, there
No
was.
relation at all.
Yes, there was. You
Which
are
is
the
that?
connection.
I know, but there's no last name.
Doesn't matter. You are the connection between the two, and you're the one that the letter was sent to.
Mhm.
So if somebody sends you a letter, if some medium says, "Hey, I want you to deliver this letter to this guy named Humberto," clearly she already knows Humberto. She already knows something about you. Okay, so she sends a letter to you, and after you get the letter, you go to her meeting. Now, have you watched the video of James Randi exposing Peter Popoff using a...
Of course I did, sir.
Okay.
And so what happened is, I totally agree with you. There's a lot of ways to investigate that. In order to do that, you have to have something to gain, because this is expensive investigation.
You don't think she had something to gain by having 600 people think that she's talking to the dead?
No, because she doesn't. It's not. There's not even one penny happens there. Not even 1 cent.
Okay, so first of all, how does she pay her bills? How does she pay for the arena? How does she pay for the arena where 600 people show up?
It's nobody pays for that. If you want,
I want to move to Brazil.
Yeah, no
I want to
kidding.
move to Brazil where you don't have to pay for anything.
Let me tell you something. This, unfortunately, she dies, but there's someone that is keeping her work. It's not as much powerful as she is, but like you say, you want to go there. I mean,
I think she's probably exactly as powerful.
But let me tell you, just add something. Like I said, I keep coming back. And I got married, okay? And start getting message from all kinds of message. I became taking people with me. So one day, there was one day, unfortunately, there was a bus that catch a fire, and a lot of people die inside the bus. My friend lost his mother. His mother was too fat, and she tried to get out of the bus through the window, but she couldn't. And she died, burned in the bus. And it was like 2 days before I was going there, so I took my friend with me. And once again, she called, "Monica's here." And so I went there to get a message. When I went, I brought my friends with me, my friend. And he came with me with no notice at all. And she asked, what are your friends doing here? No, he came here with me because he lost someone. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, you lost your mother on the bus.
Humberto.
Okay, let me just finish that.
No, we don't need to finish. You kept going back to see her, right? And then you took people with you.
Yes.
So let's say I'm in the business, whether I'm making money or just getting applause or accolades or whatever else, of convincing people that I'm a psychic. And I've managed to convince Humberto that I got a message. And Humberto keeps coming back. Wouldn't it make sense for me to have somebody keep an eye on what's going on in Humberto's life?
Yes, of course. And then you have the biggest investigation you're coming with a conspiracy theory. That's what you're coming with. And I learned, don't give attention to that with you.
Well, okay, but let's imagine for just a moment. Here's the facts of the story. Somebody gave you a message that they claimed was from the other side. You went and saw them.
Yeah.
Now, hang on, I'm starting at the beginning. Somebody gave you a message that they claimed was from the other side that had details that you don't think anybody else could know. You went and saw them and got additional information that you don't think anybody else could know. You kept coming back over and over to bring additional people who got information that you don't think anybody else could know. Let's assume for a second.
I can see that.
Okay. The question is, how is this person acquiring the information that they are giving you? Is it more likely that they're talking to the spirit world than that they have some other mechanism, considering the number of magicians and charlatans who can pull this off?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So if that's the case, how could this ever be enough to convince somebody, to reasonably convince somebody that they're getting messages from the spirit world?
Matt, let me tell you something. Let me ask you, sir. I'm sorry. I totally agree with you. I'm a very skeptic person.
Well, you don't totally agree with me because you're calling in to talk about how this has convinced you, at least somewhat.
Mm-hmm. So let me tell you something. If you show up in a place like that with no notice at all, and someone gets to you and say, "Oh, I don't know who you are. Oh, okay, your name is Matt. Oh, okay, so your grandmother had a cat." And start giving those kind of informations that no one could have. You're right.
Nobody knew my grandmother had a cat?
Okay, someone can investigate.
Okay, then you don't. Here's the problem, Humberto. You don't get to say nobody could know this and then turn around and acknowledge that people could. This is how con artists exploit people. They get them convinced that they're giving them information. They get people convinced that they're being given information that nobody could know, when the truth is, people could know.
Yeah, but con artists make money out of this.
Con artists make money out of it, yes. First of all, I don't believe. Humberto, how well did you know this medium?
Very well. She's very famous in Rio. And what happened is, in Brazil, we have a spiritual doctrine called Spiritism.
I understand. Yes. I'm well aware of this. I asked you how well did you know this person?
Oh, actually, it's a coincidence. There's a great friend of mine, that I know all his family, and he was one of the persons that works in her staff. And that's how I got to know.
So now we find out
there's another connection.
There's yet another somebody who works on her staff is tied to your family.
Yeah, it's like but it's no. He doesn't know my family at all. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
But he knows you.
I'm sorry?
He knows you.
Oh yeah, he knows me. Yeah.
Okay, so how hard could it be to find out details about your family?
If I find out that my cousin works for John Edwards, do you think I'm going to take anything John Edwards says seriously? I mean, granted, I'm not ahead of time, but certainly as soon as I find out. Okay.
I'm sorry, but what I'm saying is, trying to gather information in Brazil. Good luck on that. It's a big mess. There's no records. It's amazing. You don't understand what I'm saying. It's impossible to get those kind of information.
But no, it's not.
You are too fond. Humberto, you are way too fond of the word impossible, when impossible is not the correct word.
Probably. You're right. But impossible is not the right. Unlikely, I say. Very unlikely.
Let me get back to my actual question. Somebody who presents themselves as a medium gives you information that you don't think is very likely they could have come by. What conclusion can you reach from that?
It's a fake. It's a bullshit.
No, you can't. You cannot reach the conclusion that it's fake and bullshit.
That's okay, but this is what I'm going to think. It's going to be at least my first
I asked what conclusion can you reach from that information?
What a it's a fake. That's what.
No, how did you determine it was? How did you determine it's a fake?
Because probably it is. It's. I mean.
No, Humberto, this is getting us nowhere.
I'm sorry.
You're calling in to basically say somebody gave me information that I don't think they could have had, and this is making me think that it could possibly be true. And then when I ask what conclusion you should be able to reach from that, the correct answer is I cannot reach any conclusion from that. You then say that it's reasonable to conclude that it's a fake.
Yeah. That's I'd say you be more reasonable than me. But it was the first thing I thought. I thought it was a fake.
Okay.
But when I read it, and I saw the details that no one knew. We'll talk about.
Okay, well,
But we've already established that. Wait,
I can't keep doing this. Go ahead, Jen.
We've already established that some people did know those details, and that it's not impossible.
No. I'm sorry. We're talking about two things. Things that was in the letter. No one knew. We're talking about outlaw things.
Okay. Well, look. I think we probably need to move on, but just to let you know, we get emails all the time from people commenting on Spiritism in Brazil and how it's one of the biggest scams out there. And so I think you've been scammed, and I know that's kind of...
I don't know how. I don't know how, because I haven't...
Okay, so you're basically, somebody did a magic trick, and you're irritated that you don't know how it works. Well... Trust me, I know how some of this stuff works, and one of the big reasons that I don't tend to tell people is because if you tell somebody how a trick is done, and they aren't experts in this and they don't study, then they think the next time something very similar happens, it was done that way, and if they can show it wasn't done that way, now they're more likely to believe it. If I show you how I last night at the Christmas party that was at my house, I predicted a card that somebody was going to take. It was an envelope sitting off to the side, boom, done. If I told you how I did it, you would think you know how that trick is done. But maybe I know 20 ways to do it. And so if I tell you one way, and that's all you know is the one way, the next time I do it and I show you that I didn't use that method, you're more likely to think that it was real. I'm sorry that you don't know how. I'm sorry that you don't know how these mediums and psychics do their tricks.
Actually, I do, because I've been those last 10 years, and I saw a lot of ones that was a scam. And in contrast,
I'm confused. I'm confused. Are you saying that you think this person was scamming you or not?
No, I've been with this person for the last 10 years, going to not only me, but thousands of people. It's a very popular place in Rio. They don't, like I said, they don't charge you any money for that.
You've given no...
I've asked this question 4 times
You've given no money to this person?
No money.
Has anybody given any money?
Nobody gives no money.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I don't believe it either.
I don't believe for a second that this person is not gaining financially. But even, oh my God, even if they're not gaining financially, you've identified this person as an incredibly famous medium that hundreds, if not thousands of people go to. Now, maybe they're not charging anybody at that event. Maybe she's not getting rich off of it. Maybe she's never made a penny off of it, but she's gotten famous off of it, and that's enough reason for some people to do it.
Actually not. She didn't get famous off.
Okay, we're done. You don't get to talk about how somebody's an incredibly well-known medium and how hundreds and thousands of people are going there, but she didn't get famous off of it. I'm sorry that somebody probably or possibly used a magic trick to fool you and you don't know how it works, but...
Just going to also point out the famous last words here. I'm very skeptical, but...
Yeah. So I actually, on occasion, I've been a magician since I was 3. I'm doing more and more of it. I'm doing an event with James Randi on April 2nd. What I will do for Humberto is, while James Randi and I are there, assuming it fits with the schedule in the talk that we're having about magic and skepticism, I will go into the Spiritism, psychics, and what we can and can't say about those things. You can look around online. It's April 2nd in Vancouver. It's put on by Pangburn Philosophy, but it's me and James Randi talking about magic and skepticism. And then after that, I'll be touring Canada, hopefully. We're still working out details, doing some of my own magic, including mentalism, where I can pretend to read people's minds and make predictions and all the sorts of things that the air quotes psychics do.
Wasn't it James Randi that did something one time where he was trying to show people how cold reading works?
Mm-hmm.
And so he did the whole cold reading spiel, and then he explained it to the audience, and somebody stood up and said, "That's not true, you're a fake." And he's like, "Exactly, I'm a fake." And then he realized what the guy was saying was that, no, you really do have these, abilities. You're faking that you don't.
Right,
you know?
and so another example is I believe it's Ray Hyman, who was doing cold reading, which is this kind of conversational priming to get information out and make it seem like that you're reading their mind or getting messages from the other side. And there's a whole bunch of aspects to this that we're not going to go into. But Ray got so good at it that he started convincing himself that he could actually do and so this is one of the things, a lot of these psychics buy into their own bullshit because they get so good at what they're doing that they think, oh my gosh, back to coincidence, I certainly couldn't be getting all of this.
Yeah.
And if you throw out a seemingly random, strange bit of information, like there's a handful of people out in the audience, but from somebody out there, there's a dog that it didn't die, but it was injured recently, and it had to take it to a vet. And the dog's name is like something like, it's a strange name. It's not like what you would normally name a dog. Is it Randall or something like that? If you have a big enough audience, sometimes that's going to hit. But let's say it didn't. Let's say nobody acknowledged. Everybody's out there going, nope, no dog named Randall, no dog named Randall. You just ignore it and you keep going on saying the next thing of bullshit that you're going to say. And when people walk out of the theater, they remember all the things you got right, they forget all the things that you got wrong, and they think you're a miracle worker. When really, you're making some commonplace statements about people. I can look out in the audience and just based on somebody's ages, there are certain things that I can think are likely about them. Somebody on this side of the audience was playing a video game yesterday, right? If so, raise your hand. Yes, so boom. Oh, two people on this side. And nobody on this side of the audience was playing a video game yesterday. Is that correct? So there's 4 people over here, and I got it absolutely correct.
Oh my God, you're psychic. It's impossible you could have gotten that
Look.
right randomly.
If you know how to do something that somebody else doesn't know, that's cool. If you use it to exploit them the way that the mediums do, where they go into people who are grieving, who have lost ones, who are desperate to reconnect, that is vile and disgusting. And I don't care if you're doing it for money or prestige or just to make yourself feel superior to somebody else, you're getting something out of it. It's, if these people could really talk to the dead, why don't the dead ever tell us anything useful, like where they hid the will?
Yeah.
Why don't they tell us, I'm not really your father. You should get a genetics test so that you can discover that you actually have conditions or are likely to have conditions that don't come from me. That everything about your family medical history is wrong. Oh, that you were actually adopted and we never told you. Hey, I voted for, so-and-so in this election, even though I told you this other thing. Oh, nope, it's, I love you, I'm fine, things are great over here on the other side. Oh, and standing next to me is your grandmother's niece, and she lost a cat once, and it's buried in the backyard. It's not important, you're never going to look, but you're going to think, yeah, there's a cat buried in the backyard. Sorry, honey, I didn't mean to go to dead cats. But where to now?
Let's see.
Because we got 10 minutes left.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Pick one that looks interesting.
All right. I'm trying. Oh, all right, this is coming up. We got Craig in Detroit.
Hey, how's it going, Jen, Matt? Good to speak to you.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
So the holidays are coming up, and as you guys aren't having any more shows before then, I thought maybe this is a good time to address this. I've got this uncle little bit of a backstory.
Oh, there is a show. There is a show, Craig, next week.
Yes, there is.
Jen is hosting with John Iacoletti, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he's
I will
hosting
be sure to tune into it.
All right.
I've been listening to you guys for about a year since I discovered podcasts. And I've always wanted to talk to both of you. Matt, I'm a Navy veteran as well. Hoo-yah.
Yeah.
And
somebody, because I'll sit like this, and somebody said, "Oh, he's so self-conscious about his tattoo." No, I'm not. It's just the way my arms are. This is crossed anchors. I was in the Navy for 8 years as boats at the end. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Boats aren't ashamed of anything. So anyway, a little bit of a backstory. I was raised in a Lutheran family, Wisconsin Synod Lutheran, and on both sides. And I've got this uncle who's he went into the West Point, went to be a Michigan State trooper for many years, was a college cheerleader at Michigan State. I mean, this guy's got a pretty crazy resume. And then he went to be a pastor, and he traveled around a lot, getting kicked out of churches because his message was too brash.
Wow.
And so now he heads a church where it's him and one other family, and they alternate houses. At whose house it's going to be at, and I consider it, and most of my family considers it to be a cult. But he tends to give the invocation at family holiday dinners. And the last time that I had the privilege of being at one of his holiday invocations was right after I had gotten engaged to my wife. Mm-hmm. And he tends to give a sermon before he gives his prayer, and his prayer is bullshit too, and we'll get to that. But the sermon he gave that year was about how basically being engaged to people these days was meaningless, and it was just an excuse to partake in the fruits of, basically bedroom stuff. And it was like incredibly offensive, and it was obviously geared towards me, and most of my family was pretty uncomfortable with it as well. But he's the pastor, so they don't challenge him. And I didn't challenge it either, but I was like, all right, this guy's an asshole. So I fully expect, since then I came out as an atheist to my family, and I fully expect there to be something about that at this holiday dinner. But he gives this invocation that says, "The eyes of all look to you, O Lord, and you give them their food at the proper time. You open your hand and satisfy the desires of every living thing." And then he continues on with the "Bless us, O Lord," crap. And it makes me angry because it's like nobody listens to the actual words that are coming out of his mouth. The eyes of all do not look to his Lord, and he does not satisfy the desires of every living thing. And if you want proof of that, all you got to do is do a quick Google search of starving children.
Sure.
And most of these come from incredibly religious countries. So, I'm not exactly sure. I have 2 children now, which is new since the last time I had to bear one of his sermons. And I'm not exactly sure how to approach this. I mean, I guess part of me says leave the room when he gives his invocation, but then it's kind of one of those things, who's going to escalate this further? Me leaving the room is kind of a passive-aggressive act, but staying is just going to allow me to get kicked around. So, it's kind of one of those ethical things. Where do you go from there? You got a family that's not going to speak up for you, would rather just kind of ignore it, and I'm not allowed to speak up for myself for the sake of family unity. So
why is it
hard place?
Why is it that you're not allowed to speak up for the sake of family unity, but they get to blab on without any regard to family unity?
I couldn't agree with you more.
This year is going to be more difficult for me. So first thing is, whoever's house it is, who's their house, their rules.
Yeah.
So
my grandparents.
Yeah. So
okay.
If they're, so I can tell you what's going to happen for me this holiday season. And I'll just say Christmas season, because I celebrate an entirely secular Christmas, which I'll be talking about on an Atheist Debates video this week.
Awesome.
I go up and I visit my last remaining grandmother in Kansas City, and we play cards and fiddle fart around, watch TV, and have a good time. Done. Visit with some family members, move on. Then I go over and I'll be staying at my folks' house, and we'll be having some sort of Christmas, early Christmas at my brother's. If people want to pray, I stand there quietly when they pray. I don't have to deal with a massive sermon that is, they tend to keep it as, hey, we're just going to thank God for the food and, everything that's happened and blah, blah, blah. And they get to do that, and they know what my views are. And I actually, when they're at my house visiting, if they want to pray before a meal, I'm not going to stop them. It's not like, no, you've entered my house. But they, they don't get to force me to pray or participate, and I just stand by respectfully. We'll then go visit Beth's family, and I will, in fact, probably go to church on Christmas Day. Now, that's an interesting thing, is Christmas falls on Sunday this year. When that happens, and this is a good year since it's happening, you can go around and look. How many churches are actually open?
Yeah.
There are churches that shut down whenever Christmas is on Sunday. Jerry DeWitt and I talked about this the other day when he was a Pentecostal preacher. If Christmas fell on a Sunday, you just didn't have service because everybody was off visiting family. And at most, the churches that would have like 2 morning services and an evening will just have like 1 morning service, or Catholics will always have like the midnight mass type thing.
Right.
Yeah, we had a sunrise service at our church. It was just a one-time thing on Christmas Day.
And they're not massively well attended. I mean, Catholic Mass, we went to that last year, but it's, there are people who are on the road traveling, visiting family. Yeah. So it's a good business decision to not, turn the heater on and the lights on at the church if 10 people are going to show up. This year's going to be more difficult for me because it's not just going to be potential religious discussions. There are going to be potential political discussions where I know that I am going to be in vehement disagreement, not only with the politics, but with the actual votes and cheering with regard to presidential elections and Senate races and other stuff. Those are the conversations that I'm probably going to have to be most diplomatic about this year.
Yeah. Yeah, the prayers, I mean...
Yeah, it's just the idea... I'm sorry, Jen.
No, I was going to say, the prayers, I mean, if I'm visiting someone's house and they want to pray, I generally, even if it's a relative, and even if I know that they're obnoxious as hell, I usually just kind of don't say anything. And I'm not going to bow my head or anything, but, I'm obviously not participating. If somebody opens their eyes and looks up, they're going to see me staring right back at them because...
And if I was in the room with, you talked about being concerned that it might be viewed as passive-aggressive. Hey, a shirt just fell off the wall. I did that with my mind. See, you can claim it all after the fact. Yes, it may be viewed as passive-aggressive. There are ways to avoid that. One of them would be to talk to your uncle before his sermon and say, look, I have my views and you have yours. I don't want to make a fuss. You get to, we each have the right to have our beliefs. But when you give your sermon, I'm not going to be in the room. And I don't want you to necessarily take this as a slight. One of the things that has worked well is to say, look, I'm not going to participate in this particular religious thing, in part because it might be disrespectful to have, a godless heathen who is in every way opposed to what you're doing, fake it and play along with this. Or it's fine to say, I don't agree with what you're saying and I don't want my kids to hear it. And that's my right as a parent. So rather than create a fuss, we'll just go out of the room when that happens and we'll come back in and enjoy dinner and everything else with somebody.
Yeah, I thought of just showing up late, maybe,
Well, and that's a technique I've actually used before. If I knew that a particularly obnoxious religious person was going to be, at some event, and I could arrange to be late. And I missed the prayer. I'm so sorry.
Well,
in my case, most of the events,
you can blame a lot of things on that.
Yeah,
I couldn't possibly be late because in my case, there's going to be a collection of. I'd have to skip entirely to avoid the covers.
And usually it's one of those things where you don't want people waiting for you, so you call ahead and say, "Oh, hey, we're running really late. Y'all go ahead.
Yeah,
we'll be along.
Yeah.
In a little bit." And that way they know it's okay. Go ahead and
wrap it up.
Yeah.
I appreciate the the ideas of how to deal with that, Matt. It never occurred to me to talk to the guy because we just don't get along. But who's got to be the bigger man? And apparently it's got to be me every time. So I'm gonna and I have no problem assuming that role. But that kind of struck me, and I'm really glad that you said it.
Yeah, it's worth trying because think about it strategically. Let's say you are the incredibly zealous defender of the faith, and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, we each have our own beliefs, and I don't want to cause a ruckus, so, rather than pretending to go along with it or anything else, I'll just, let me know when you're going to do this, and we'll just quietly wait in the other room. What can that person do? What are they going to do? Are they going to go to the whole rest of the family and go, well, we would really like to have Craig and his family in here, but they've decided, now they look like the douche that they potentially are.
Yeah. Oh, he is, don't worry.
Yeah. Well, and,
have him call the show.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
Oh, wow, yeah, that'd be an entertaining call to listen to. I barely made it through your last caller. I was like, I was about to be like, all right, screw this.
I think your uncle has tried to start Westboro Lutheran.
That conversation.
Yeah.
It really is. It's very similar, and it's troubling that so many members of my family subscribe to that. It's like they always fall short of like condemning that group all the way.
But the thing is,
we don't think like that. But
it may not be that they're so much on board with him, is that they don't want to be the one to step up and cause the family rift. And this is one of the things that really sucks about these, religious zealots in the family, is that they're never the ones who are, trying to be the peacemakers and keep the peace in the family and kind of not cause a problem. They're fine causing a problem, and if you don't go... you got to go along with their views, or they're going to be the ones having a fit. And
on that note, Craig, we got to let you go. We've hit our time limit. There's one more call I want to get to real quick. And I appreciate
Thanks so much for taking my call, man.
All right,
have a good Christmas, holiday season, whatever. Hope it goes well. As a reminder, once the show's over, we go to dinner at Star of India. There's the address. Any atheist or atheist-friendly people? I didn't know if you wanted to add in there. We're gonna finish up with Dana today from Hernando, Florida. Hey, Dana.
Hey, there's been a lot of people on the sites that have supported me during the last week, and they wanted me to call in because something else happened. My sister called, as you know, from 800 miles away, and just to give me the good news that I was going to hell, and she was trying to force me to accept Christ while she was on the phone. And
so she called you back?
She called. No, I talked to Russell.
This is an update from. So she hasn't called you since then.
No, I talked to Russell, and he said you don't have to defend yourself, which that surprised me, and took the weight off of my shoulders. And he said, talk lovingly to her. But they chop-blocked me. My whole family lives 800 miles away with her. And my daughter and my nieces and my sisters have disowned me.
It's, we were
They just did that. They just did that today.
Oh, I'm sorry that they've decided to behave that way.
Yeah.
Because...
But I don't... they don't mind causing the damage or the hurt.
No.
And here I am with it. Yeah. And I've had the support of the community. But holy crap, I don't know how to deal with this.
Yeah, I don't know that there's like a single answer we could give you, because ultimately you can't control what other people decide to do.
I know this is the last thing she can do to me.
It is.
But man.
Yeah,
they kick below the belt.
Yeah. She's basically done the worst. So,
yes.
That's it. And it really sucks, because I know that you didn't become an atheist to piss her off, No,
I kept quiet about it because I knew it would piss her off. Right.
And, this is an example of, she values her religious belief more than she values a real live person. That speaks volumes about her character.
Not only that, are they a particular denomination?
Well, actually, they're just, they were Baptist. Now they're non-denominational.
Well, they're crappy Baptists and they're crappy non-denominational because, first of all, you've demonstrated that you're the better person. Much like many of the other atheists that we've talked to, you didn't set out to end a relationship. You actually kept yourself kind of hidden away to not cause problems. And when you decided to come out, they cut you off. And as Jen has said many times, you're family when you act like family. I don't care if you're blood relative or not. You either act like family and treat people like family, or you don't. And if somebody is, if I have the choice between keeping somebody in my life who is going to be disrespectful and caustic all of the time to me, or having them cut me off, I'd rather have them cut me off because I'm a better person, because I'm treating them with love, and they're not treating me with love. And if they're Christians, and they're Bible-believing Christians, please have them. Well, I mean, you don't have to interact with them at all, but my question to them would be, is what would Jesus think of them cutting you out of the family? They're going to pick out specific verses that support theirs. There are also.
She said I asked for it.
You asked for it.
And this was.
She doesn't know the Bible. She doesn't know Christianity.
Well.
And I could actually probably call Matt Slick right now, who I've had several debates with. He's a Calvinist. He's a Christian. And we talked about this, about children being disowned by their families because they're atheists. And Matt has actually said that he was going to go into a special version of his radio show to point out to these Christians that they are in fact shitty Christians. They are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not loving their family. They are not spreading the love of Jesus to people. And he wants to work in conjunction with atheist organizations to find homes for these kids who have been displaced and disowned. Now, I'd rather that we find them secular homes, so I don't know how much we're going to work with Matt. But what they're doing has very little, if anything, to do with any significant doctrine within Christianity. What's really happening here is they are absolutely terrified of something that's different from them. They are baffled at how someone they could love could not think the same way that they do. And rather than having to face it, rather than having to defend their faith, it's much easier for them to just say, she's the terrible one, let's have nothing to do with her. And the second they've done that, they've demonstrated that they are horrible human beings, despite whether or not they are horrible with respect to their religion. And as much as painful as it is, and as much as it feels like losing, like your entire family just died and you are in mourning, you are not alone in this. And there are atheist and secular organizations that you can begin to interact with and begin building new families. And when your family, after some period of time, begins to reach out to you, because this has happened. It's happened within my extended family, my own family, my wife's family, where somebody's cut off, and then eventually somebody in the family wakes up and goes, man, wouldn't it be great to hear from Dana again? And they'll make some...
What do I do about losing a child? How do I...
Well, she may come around as well.
You have to give it time.
Yeah, it's not a quick thing.
You have to be the bigger person. They may never apologize.
Yeah.
But they might start acting. They might start acting better. So what happened with regard to some section of my family that I won't go into is they treated someone very, very badly for almost 4 whole years. And then they decided they wanted to brush it all under the rug, no apologies, and just pretend like it didn't happen and go back to some attempt at a new normal. This is all fresh and raw, and there are tons of us that have been through it. Give it some time. Keep being the same sweet person that you've always been, so that eventually what's going to happen is they're going to realize you didn't turn on them.
Right.
They turned on you. And even if they never acknowledge it, there's a good chance that they will make some attempt to, if not make amends or correct it, at least to find a new peaceful way of having a family. And if it doesn't happen...
There's a good chance, there's a better chance they'll never contact me. They're very...
And
I went to seminary just to impress my sister.
It's very cold comfort. But I will say that if they never contact you again, even though it doesn't feel like it, in my opinion, you're better off.
Yep.
My life is so much better when the people who can't appreciate me for me just remove themselves from my life. I miss them,
wow.
but I'm happier. I didn't do anything. I didn't set out to piss them off. I didn't rebel against a God. I am the person who's actually more moral and more righteous in treating them in a particular way than they are. And if that's not reciprocated...
Sounds like I've just got to get a spine.
Well, I think you do have a spine.
I think you do, yeah.
I think what you're experiencing right now is grief, and that's normal.
You got to give it time.
And it's raw and it's fresh. Okay.
Yep.
And it's extra shitty that they did it right before Christmas.
Yep.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad I was able to get on it. So many people at the site wanted to hear how things are going.
Thanks, Dana. And look around in your area in Florida. There's a number of Florida groups. There are people that you can hang out with, people who've been through the same thing. And
I found one about 2 hours away, and we'll be going the next time they have a meeting in January.
Good.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, keep in touch and let us know, over time if things improve and that you're finding your way. I don't, and I'm not like everybody else. I don't get as emotional as some people do about some of this stuff. I'm very pragmatic in the sense that when I got rid of my God beliefs, I'm now free to explore the world and enjoy the world without the idea that somebody's staring down, watching me and judging everything I do. That was liberating. For other people, it's debilitating. They feel that they've lost something significant. For me, it was liberating. Everybody is different.
Actually, you don't need a God judging everything you do because there's so many Christians willing to do it for them.
That's true.
Very, very true. But you can always say, let God be true and every man a liar, and then they have to just shut up. Which reminds me, Pastor John Hagee tweeted out something the other day along those lines of, don't trust anything that men say, only trust what God say. And I immediately tweeted back at him, isn't that a man tweeting that? So,
Yeah,
God says nothing.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dana.
Thank you.
Appreciate your call. That's it for us this week. Jen will be back next week with John. And that'll be the last show for this year. You can visit atheist-community.org and look at the position statements and get involved in the community. There's the Facebook thing. There's the email address, tv@atheist-community.org, and you can meet us for dinner if you want to. I'm out until 2017, so Mele Kalikimaka, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Kwanzaa, and if you're not celebrating anything, cool, have a good time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Russell Glasser, host of The Atheist Experience. The Atheist Experience is made possible by volunteers and the generous support of viewers like you. If the promotion of positive atheist culture and separation of church and state are values that you hold, please consider contributing by becoming an ACA member or visiting our product page at evolvefish.com under the Partner tab. Thank you.